The Paper Mario series is wild. It's like if the Mario series as an overall concept had a wild night with the Final Fantasy series and the two, had a child. I suppose Mario would be the one having the child here? And it's his body, so he should get custody of the child if he wants it. What am I talking about? Anyway, today I want to discuss Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door in particular. I just finished a Let's Play series of streams on it, which you can find on my VOD channel if you so desire, and I have a lot of things I want to talk about. Lord knows I can be a yapper. This series is literally called The Vampire Talks. So the premise is that you're following Mario and his party to 7 areas surrounding the hub town of Rogueport, collecting the 7 crystal stars in order to find and rescue Princess Peach, as is the standard Mario plot. It's not like she doesn't play a somewhat active role in the plot. She's the impetus of why we would go to Rogueport in the first place, and B, finds out some important info. You're pursued nigh relentlessly by the X-Nauts, a band of little guys who are like the planet Earth in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Mostly harmless. Their boss is called Lord Crump, and his boss is a big robot guy called Sir Brutus. He has a cyber scepter. I want a scepter. The game's story structure is quite standard. In fact, they did something very similar in the first Paper Mario game for the Nintendo 64 as well, down to collecting stars, albeit those stars were alive and not precious gems. Get the major collectibles, beat bosses, meet fun friends. Just because we've seen this type of story before doesn't mean it's a bad story. It more than makes up for the standard structure with some utterly charming characters, worlds, art direction, and the miniature plots within the major story. The episodic nature of the story keeps things fresh enough to keep your interest, and then doesn't overstay its welcome. So there's usually at least one major character that the story revolves around in each area. Sometimes they're a party member, sometimes they aren't. I will list them out here for you, because this is a YouTube video, and bitches like us, we love to list things. The prologue has Goombella. She's the first party member, possibly the cutest Goomba in any Mario game ever, don't test me on that. An archaeology student, even though she doesn't have the hat and a bullwhip, introduces us to Professor Frankly, who is the smart guy who knows a lot of stuff, and sends us to where we need to go. And she looks up enemies in her little book to tell us their stats and a bit about each enemy. I love her unironically and refuse to take any criticism. Petalburg has Koops, the timid and shy Koopa party member that I barely used outside of the necessary times. He's a little shy wait, no, wrong Mario enemy. He's a little shy Koopa who overcomes his fears through peer pressure to find his dad in Hooktail's castle. As I mentioned, I barely used him due to lack of interest on my part. Chapter 2 takes place in Bogley Woods and has a puny called Punio for its major story character. He's a fairly standard personality for a little slug with legs and an anglerfish dangly. This is asking more questions than I can answer about the punies. Anyway, the puny puzzles where they all follow you around were a fucking nightmare, and while their designs are both cute and confusing, I was kind of glad to see the back of them. My life is full of little guys. Glitzville in the Glitz Pit has to be my favorite chapter. Tournament arcs are fun to play through yourself. In the midst of fighting up the ranks in order to get the crystal star attached to the champion's belt, you find yourself in the thralls of a mystery. Who has been spiriting away contestants in the Glitz Pit, and why? You receive instructions on your Game Boy Advance SP's emails. Since when did they have that function? From someone calling themselves X, unraveling all of the secrets and the mysterious plans afoot. The mysterious plans are afoot. What's afoot? This is a foot. Yeah, I can float. I'm a vampire. I can float. I'm cool like that. I'm chill like that. We briefly think of someone who could be the perpetrator, but no. It was actually the head of the Glitz Pit, Grubber, with an energy-draining machine to drain the standout contestants of their energy and bring him back to his glory days. The person we initially thought was the problem and the actual main NPC of this chapter, Jolene, was the mysterious ex, who was searching for her brother, who was a disappeared contestant. Grubber actually murders him, but he gets better through the power of the crystal star and sibling love. Anyway, I like Jolene. She presents a cool and stern exterior, but that isn't 100% of her character. Like me, I present a cool and stern exterior. Would I lie to you? On purpose? In 2025? She has a surprising amount of emotional depth for a toad. The guy who's usually, like, screaming. Twilight Town is a weird chapter. We think it's a short chapter about finding out why the town is cursed to transform into pigs when the bells toll, and initially it is. However, the boss we defeat at the top of the tower in Creepy Steeple is an enemy called a Duplighost named Duplis that can steal people's looks. He takes Mario's looks via his name. He steals Mario's name and looks and leaves Mario a shadow, literally. And he tricks the rest of the party into following him and steals the glory for removing the town's curse. Then we get to meet Vivian, a shadow siren and former boss enemy who gets bullied by her sister. I adore Vivian. She's a cute pink witch. What's not to love? Vivian had one major change from the original English language release of Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. In this version, in the original Japanese, she explicitly states that she's transgender. Not a femboy like I've seen some people on Twitter saying. Explicitly transgender. I'm going to leave some more in-depth thoughts to my trans friend, since, you know, she's more affected by those kinds of things than I am, a cisgender woman. She's more affected by trans issues than I am.
I think it's cool that Vivian is trans, explicitly trans. There's a reason she's the most popular character in the game, and her representation seems very genuine to me. She goes through a real, well-written arc about her transness. However, that's also a small pet peeve of mine, that whenever you see a trans character, their arc has to be about transness in some fashion. You rarely see a trans character just be trans and do something entirely different. There are some minor exceptions to this. You can consider Celestat, even though it's subtextually a little bit about transness. At least the main character is explicitly trans, but not in a way that the story is explicitly about transness. It is just not the biggest issue, but this is a common trope that sort of bothers me. And yeah, this is more of a systemic issue, so it's not really something I blame the Thousand Year Door for. I do still like the representation in it, and it was way ahead of its time, well, the Japanese version at least, and it's very important to see this representation too. It is also very nice to see a trans character in the Mario series, and the struggle she goes through seems realistic, is well written, and of course Compella Vivian is a very cute ship.
Yar. Yar. We be setting sail on the seven seas. Are there 7 seas? I think there's more than 7 seas. My pirate accent is atrocious. In chapter 5, we have to convince an old sailor, Admiral Bobbery, to sail us to Keelhaul Key. He doesn't want to go at first after we trespass in his house. But why would he want to follow us after we trespassed in his goddamn house? So we go to find out why he doesn't want to go to sea anymore. His wife, Scarlett, had died of a fever while he was away. But an old friend who lives in the bar under the inn gives us a letter from her to give to Bobbery to make him want to set sail again. Why the letter wasn't sent and received sooner is entirely beyond me, but whatever works, I guess. I think I have a bit of a weakness for gruff old military men thanks to my late grandfather, so yeah. Chapter 6 has a penguin detective that looks like Tuxedo Sam. Next question. I feel like chapters 7 and 8 don't really have a main NPC like the previous chapters do. Maybe chapter 7 has the fucking bomb that you have to backtrack through all the previous fucking worlds for. Or Tech, the robot that has a crush on Peach for some reason that I choose to believe is a gay crush. If a robot is sentient, does it have a gender identity? Confuse myself. Anyway, I choose to believe that Tech is gay. I'm just a filthy himejoshi, I guess. And finally, I guess you could argue that the Shadow Queen herself is the focus character for Chapter 8. Even though she doesn't adequately fit into the same slot as the previous characters I mentioned. Fighting her is... Getting to her and fighting her in order to defeat her once and for all is kind of the... Not even kind of, it is the culmination of the journey through the game. All in all, the characters in this game are very varied, and 99% of them are very charming, except for that fucking French guy that inspires violence in the very violence of my soul. But that's neither here nor there. I enjoy in particular how ominous the threat of the X-Nauts and eventually the Shadow Queen are throughout the story. Like, the X-Naut red shirts aren't particularly threatening, but as an organization, their aim is world domination. And that's not an empty threat. This goal is very nearly achieved, and only just subverted by the skin of your teeth. If you make a certain choice right before the final boss, it absolutely happens thanks to you. And everything up until now was for naught. But you didn't choose that, right? The battle system is turn-based, with action elements. You choose an action, such as jump, hammer, and special, and they all have unique action commands, which is like button presses with different timings, or you mash. Mastering action commands isn't 100% necessary, but ideal for maximizing your damage output. Luckily, it's a children's game, so it's all pretty easy. So mastery isn't much of a problem. Included in these is the badge system, allowing you to pretty much customize Mario and partner characters to some extent as you like. Some badges are extra attacks, some change stats such as attack, defense, and HP, and some are silly noises that you need to scare a big dragon. Partners are your party members. You can only have one out at a time, and switching them out expends either Mario's turn or the partner's turn. Their movesets are less customizable than Mario's, as badges can only affect their attack, but all of their movesets are pretty varied, and when you have all 7 party members, you're sorted for every occasion. Also, you can go to a specific place and upgrade everyone, so you're not stuck at, like, terrible health forever. I think that all of these combined make the gameplay a decent mix of tactics and skill. Mario is the jack-of-all-trades powerhouse, which is needed for when he's alone, and then each party member provides something that Mario doesn't necessarily have. By the endgame, you have an arsenal at your disposal that's only hindered by your skill level and how many badge points you have. Although this isn't relevant to battling, on the field, every partner character has a unique skill that can be used to solve puzzles, traverse the map, or just find items if it's Ms. Mouse, who isn't needed to complete the game as she's a hidden party member. I think it's nice that there's no unnecessary party member, in my opinion. Next up is the fun stuff on the cutting room floor. So I really like looking stuff up on the website, the cutting room floor, which is where people catalog hidden content, dummied out content, things that were left out in development, prototypes, stuff like that. I did mention some stuff from there in my Xenogears and Final Fantasy 15 videos, but here's some more. Relevant to this game though. In the GameCube versions files, you can find a few early graphics for specifically Mario, Admiral Bobbery, Vivian, and Goombella. Mario and Bobbery are definitely the most visually different from their early graphics. Mario looks more like the art style for the Nintendo 64 Paper Mario, which they definitely should remake alongside the Super Paper Mario for the Switch 2. It would be interesting to see how they'd make Super Paper Mario for the Switch 2, but I digress. Admiral Bobber looks like he has a different theme altogether. Rather than a marine theme, he was initially in a different military branch, the Army. We just need a pilot Bobbery for the military trifecta. Marshal of the Mushroom Kingdom Air Force Bobbery. Yeah, I know Air Force ranks for Delvin. Specifically RAF ranks. While Goombella's sole difference from the game itself is whether or not her feet are protected from the cold hard ground by the soles on her shoes, Vivian has a little flyer on her hat. This is apparently from some concept art where each Shadow Siren had an elemental tassel on their hat. I kind of wonder why they didn't include that in the final release. The indicators of their element in battle is solely their color. As far as enemies go, Smorg was called Moa in Japanese according to this, and there are two little guys whose files are named C-Moa A and C-Moa B. So the person who wrote this section of the article theorized that these fat little sperms with feet were the original designs for Smorg, and a recolor of this initial designs was used for one of Luigi's partners, Screamy. After calling them fat little sperms, I feel like I need to leave. It's not safe for me here anymore. I'm an anime girl. I have to take care of myself. Oh, you wanna hear my thoughts on the game? Like my final fucking verdict? Well, not my verdict, but my lovely editor brought up a good point. What are the themes and metaphors of Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door? Every area outside of Rogueport, and maybe some in Rogueport, has emotional and situational obstacles that the people involved couldn't have escaped without Mario's intervention. Koops, Admiral Bobber, and Vivian all have somewhat mental health-based obstacles to overcome, with Koops' anxiety, Bobbery's depression, and Vivian being stuck with her transphobic sisters. The residents of the Great Tree would have been SOL if they had been invaded before Mario arrived. Jolene from the Glitz Pit is pretty much at a dead end with her investigation into the Glitz Pit because she couldn't have possibly physically overwhelmed Grubba by herself as a non-combatant that I know of. I believe in her. Excess Express would have still had a ghost problem? And a Smorg problem? General White from 4 Outposts would probably still be fucking asleep after making someone else look over the entire world for him. And if Peach hadn't been fucking kidnapped, the robot wouldn't have learned what love is, I guess. Lastly, if Mario hadn't come at all in response to Peach's letter, the Shadow Queen would have destroyed the world. Or taken over it. Maybe both? Both is fun. I suppose that the overall message we can glean from this game is you gotta wait for the cis-het Italian no, maybe let's not. I'll get rude people in my comments again. My real answer is that the overall message is that it's okay to need help to solve a problem. It's a bit of a reach, but That's my personal take. I'm interested to hear what other people think, so feel free to comment down below. Anyway, thank you for watching. Remember to kiss your spouse and beat up the weird quote-unquote charming perverts like that fucking French guy. Good night.